Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today's tutorial should be a fun one. We're making a mock neck cable stitch balloon sleeve sweater just in time for all the fun winter festivities. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new, the best party-ready modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 620 grams of yarn. That's 1,400 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5 and 6.5 millimeter hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you ever met someone with your same name. In person, I have never. Details for the giveaway down below. We are using 5 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows: chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, treble crochet, and double treble crochet. This tutorial is made for size small. You can adjust it for your size, and I'll explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this dress started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5.5 millimeter hook and start off by making a chain 9 for everyone, no matter what size we're making, because we're all getting started on the cable stitch detail first. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, 1 half double crochet into every chain. Yarn over into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, starting with 1 half double crochet. So pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Once more, yarn over, next chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Our row 1 is complete. Now we're going to get started on row 2, which is a single crochet row. We're all going to start with a chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Into that first stitch, insert with 1 single, next stitch with a single. Continue with 1 single crochet to reach the end of the row. Our row 1 is complete. Now let's get started on our row 3, or our first cable stitch row. So chain 2 and flip. So getting started on our cable stitches. Every cable stitch row for our post stitches will be worked into our previous odd number row. Since we're working on our row 3, each of our post stitches will be worked into our row 1. And surrounding the cable stitch detail is going to be front post trebles, which we're going to call dividing stitches. So to get started on our first dividing stitch, we're going to yarn over twice. Finding that first stitch from our row 1, making sure we're not counting that chain 2, we're going to bring our hook underneath and through the other side the body of that first half double crochet. Yarn over and pull through. Then we're going to front post treble per usual, so yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Our first stitch, or our dividing stitch, is now complete. Now let's get started on the cable stitch detail. We're all going to get started with a set of 2 front post double treble crochets. So now yarn over 3 times. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Taking a look at our row 1, we're going to skip the following 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2, then into the following 2, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those. So like I said, skip 1, skip 2, into that following, underneath and through the other side, pull through with our first front post double treble crochet. Then from here, yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our first front post double treble crochet, another front post double treble crochet underneath the body of that following stitch. So yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Bring your hook down into that following stitch, underneath the body of that stitch, through the other side, yarn over, and pull through. Then again, yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Those are our first 2 stitches for our cable stitch detail. Now we're going to be putting one more front post double treble crochet into each of the 2 stitches that we just skipped over. So again, yarn over 1, 2, 3 times, and bring our hook back into that first skip stitch, so the stitch that's nearest to our dividing stitch. Bring our hook back underneath the body of that stitch, through the other side, then yarn over and pull through 2 till we have 1 loop left on our hook per usual. Now that that first one is completed, another front post double treble crochet underneath that following skip stitch. So yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Bring our hook down underneath that following skip stitch, through the other side, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that that crossover is completed, into the following 2 stitches, 1 front post treble crochet into each of those. So yarn over twice. Underneath the body of that following stitch, through the other side, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Just like that, and another front post treble crochet into the following, which should be the 3rd to last stitch from our row 1 so far. Now that we have these 2 front post treble crochets completed, our cable stitch detail is complete. We are going to complete it with our dividing stitch, which is another front post treble crochet into that following stitch, which should be the 2nd to last stitch from our row 1. Now that we have our dividing stitch completed, the last stitch in our row is going to be a half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So yarn over into the last stitch from our previous row. We're going to pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, and now our row 3 is complete. Now every even number row for this detail is going to be a single crochet row. So chain 1, flip our work, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, make our way down, and I'll meet you back. We are back and our row 4 is complete. Now let's get started on our row 5, so chain 2 and flip. Now we're getting started on our row 5. Like I said, every post stitch is going to be worked into our previous odd number row. So since we're working on row 5, it's going to be worked into our row 3. So getting that started, it's always going to start with a front post treble crochet, which is our dividing stitch. So yarn over twice. Finding the first stitch from our previous odd number row, we're going to bring our hook down underneath the body of that stitch, through the other side, pull through, then yarn over, pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Now that we have that started, we're going to get started on our row 5's cable stitch detail. So just into the following 2 stitches from our previous odd number row, we're going to be putting 1 front post treble crochet into each of those. So starting with a yarn over of 2, find that next available stitch from our row 3, insert your hook, and put 1 front post treble crochet into there. Then another front post treble crochet into that following stitch, so yarn over twice. Bring your hook down, underneath the body, through the other side, and continue to pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Now that we have that completed, we're going to do a set of 2 front post double treble crochets. So yarn over twice. Skip 1, skip 2 from our previous odd number row. Then into the following 2 stitches, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those. So insert your hook underneath, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Then into that following stitch, another front post double treble crochet. So yarn over 3 times again. Underneath the body of that following stitch, insert your hook underneath and through the other side, then yarn over, pull through. Yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Just like that. Now we're going to work into those 2 skip stitches, putting 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those, but now working into that window that we just made for ourselves. So starting with a yarn over, of 3. We're going to bring our hook down, finding those 2 skip stitches. This is my first skip stitch and this is my second. Underneath the body of that first skip stitch, we're going to bring our hook underneath, through the other side, pull through. Then from here, yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. That is our first crossover for our row 5. We're going to be doing another one underneath the following stitch. So yarn over 1, 2, 3 times again, pull our work down. Underneath that next skip stitch with 1 front post double treble crochet into that one. So pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 until we have just 1 loop left on our hook again. Then once we have that crossover completed, close off our cable stitch detail with a front post treble crochet. So yarn over twice, into our previous odd number rows dividing stitch, we're going to bring our hook underneath, through the other side, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2 until we have just 1 loop left on our hook. Then always finish off our cable stitch row with 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. So yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3, and now our row 5 is complete. Now, like I said, every even number row is going to be a single crochet row, so chain 1, flip our work, put 1 single crochet into every stitch. So we are back. We have just completed our first 6 rows. Now it's going to be a repeat of rows 3 through 6 until we get the total height that we need. So I'm just going to talk you guys through the following row, so chain 2 and flip. So since we're about to get started on our row 7, since it is a cable stitch row, it will be worked into our previous odd number row, and it is going to be a repeat of our row 3. So just to get the first few stitches started, we're always going to start with our dividing stitch, which is a front post treble crochet. So pull through 2, 2, 2. Then to get started on our row 7, we're going to skip the following 2 stitches, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those. Those first 2 stitches are completed. Now working into the 2 skip stitches, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those as well. And now that that crossover is completed, we're going to finish off the row the same way that we did for our row 3. Like I said, we're going to continue to repeat rows 3 through 6. If you need timestamps for any of those, they will be linked in the description, by the way, until we get a height of the dress that we want. So placing our row 1 at the length that we'd like for this dress to be, so it could be mid-thigh, could be at your knees a little bit longer, that's completely up to you. Then just continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until this reaches about 1 inch beneath the base of our neck. Then I will meet everyone back right after we complete a repeat of our row 5, and then we can get started on the side panels together. So we are back. The height of my cable stitch detail is complete. Now I have a total of 81 rows. My total height is roughly 25 inches or 63 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on the side panel. So we all should have ended right after a repeat of our row 5. So from where we're at, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now everyone's first row for the side panel is going to be a half double crochet row. So all we're going to do is working our way down the side of our cable stitch detail. So we're going to be working into each of our side rows. We're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every side row, but into this first side row, since this is going to be my neckline and we're going to need this to curve around our neck, we're going to insert with 3 half double crochets. So finding our first side row, mine is right here. We're all going to yarn over, find that top loop of that first side row, and insert with 1 into that same side row with 2, same with 3. Now from here, 1 half double crochet into every side row, making our way all the way down. So starting with the yarn over again, everyone's following side row should be the side single crochet row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 half double. Our following side row, which is a side half double crochet stitch, insert with another half double. From here, we're going to continue with 1 half double crochet into every side row, making our way all the way down. Then I will meet everyone back once we're worked into our last side row, because we do need to add 1 additional into the edge of our first cable stitch row just to make sure that the bottom stays nice and blunt. So we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our first half double crochet row. Our last half double crochet is worked into our last side row. All we're going to do is put 1 additional half double crochet into the edge of our first side row so that everything is within the same plane along the bottom. So just into that corner stitch, insert with 1 additional half double crochet. And now that we have that completed, we're going to get started on our following row, so chain 2 and flip. From here, we're just going to be putting 1 back loop half double into every stitch, leaving the last one. So starting with the yarn over, finding the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, pull through 3, and again, yarn over, next stitch is back loop, pull through 3. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every back loop, leaving the last one. So we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our row 2, leaving that last stitch. Now into that last stitch, since we are along the top, we're going to finish off this row with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So into that last stitch, simply insert with 1, into that same last stitch with a second back loop half double crochet. Now our row 2 is complete, so let's get started on our row 3. So chain 2 and flip. And now the following row is going to start with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles again. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, into that same stitch's back loop with a second half double. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we now have a neckline portion that can reach over to the side of the base of our neck, making sure that we're placing our cable stitch detail at mid-chest and still at 1 inch beneath the base of our neck. Then I will meet everyone back right after an even number row, so that we'll be along the top, and we can work straight into the shoulder together from there. So we are back. I've just completed my neckline portion. Now I have a total of 6 rows. This width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, or my total width is 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now from here, what we're going to do is make a chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. So making sure that we're placing the top of our cable stitch detail still at 1 inch beneath the base of our neck, we're going to make a chain that reaches our shoulder. Now I went ahead and already measured mine out. I need roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 8. So once we all have our chain, block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into the chain that we blocked off, for the third chain from our hook, we're going to yarn over and insert with a half double crochet. Pretty simple. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Once we reach the body, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back and our first row is complete. From here, all we're going to do is back loop half double crochets into every stitch with no increases and no decreases until we now have a portion that can reach over to the corner of our underarm. So since we're along the bottom, simply chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch. At the end of that row, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then I'll meet you guys back once we reach the corner of our underarm, right after an odd number row, so that we'll be along the bottom, and then I'll meet you back. Alrighty, so we are back. I've just completed my shoulder portion. Now I have a total of 13 rows. This width is just about 5 inches or 13 centimeters unstretched, or my total width is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, also unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here is put this piece up to ourselves, making sure that the last cable stitch row is still at 1 inch beneath the base of our neck, and the top of the shoulder is still laying at the top of our shoulder, and we're going to insert our stitch marker into the stitch that we have that's nearest to the corner of our underarm. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 25th stitch from the top, that's just about 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here, since we should all be along the bottom, is chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way up, leaving 2 stitches right before our stitch marker, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 2 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2 back loop halves. So yarn over, into that second to last back loop, pull through, last back loop, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. Now our first underarm row is complete. Let's get started on our second, so chain 2 and flip. Now since we are along the top, we're going to start this row off with a decrease of 2 back loop halves again, so yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, then from here continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. So we are back and our first 2 underarm rows are completed. What we're going to do from here is continue to repeat these 2 rows. So as a refresher, we're going to chain 2, flip our work since we should all be along the bottom, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, closing off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop halves, chain 2, flip our work, start the following row off with a decrease of 2 back loop halves and 1 back loop half into the rest of our stitches. Like I said, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can stretch all the way over to mid underarm, making sure that we're still placing this cable stitch detail at mid chest. Now we do need to make sure that we're ending just our underarm portion on a total of odd numbers. So 3, 5, 7 rows and onward. Or a total, so counting from our first half double crochet row all the way over, an even number of rows. Now once we have that portion completed, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back to get started on the other side. So we are back. I have just completed my underarm portion. Now I just did 3 underarm rows, giving me a total of 16 rows, and this width is just about 6 inches or 15 centimeters, or now my total width is 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. So just insert your 5.5 millimeter hook into the top corner stitch of the other side of our cable stitch detail, making sure that it's within the top corner, and we're going to repeat. So for the first half double crochet row, just make sure that we're starting it with an increase of 3 back loop half doubles, and once we reach the end of the row, we are still inserting 1 additional half double crochet into the edge of our first row. Then just continue on with our same neckline, shoulder, and underarm portion. Once we have all that completed, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back to get started on the back panel. We are back! I've just completed the entirety of my front panel. Now my total width is just about 14 inches or 35 centimeters unstretched, and now we're going to get started on the back panel, and that's going to be done pretty simply, so let's get started. We're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last underarm row. Now it should be the same amount of stitches on both sides, so just pick one, count it out, and make a chain of that length. I had a total of 69 stitches, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 69 for my back panel, and I actually already have my back panel completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. What we're going to do from here is yarn over. From here, into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we are going to insert with a half double, so pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Then from here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. So we've made our way up with our row 1. We should have all left our last chain, and now we're going to do an increase of 2 half doubles. So yarn over into that last chain, insert with 1 half double, into that same last chain with a second half double crochet. Now our row 1 is complete. Now getting started on our row 2, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. And start this row off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles, so yarn over into that first stitch's back loop with 1 half double, into that same back loop with a second half double. Now from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our front panel's underarm portion. Once we do, I will meet you back. So we are back. Now I have completed my sample size, but I now have the same amount of rows that I had for my front panel's underarm portion. Now what we're going to do from here is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on the front panel's underarm portion. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 25 stitches. So for my back panel, what I'm going to do is make a chain 25, but I'm still going to be doing my small sample size just to show you guys how it's done. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, so that's our turning chain. Yarn over and into the chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook. Insert with a half double crochet, and from here just put 1 half double crochet into every chain. Then once we reach the body, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Now once we have that first row completed, we're just going to continue on with that back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases until we make our way across our back. Now, the amount of rows that we're going to do is going to be the same amount of rows that we have from our shoulder all the way across to our other shoulder. So just to let you guys know, from this first half double crochet row to my last shoulder row, I have a total of 13 rows. So I have 13 rows here, 13 rows here. So that's 13 plus 13, that's 26. And then once we have that total amount of rows done, we're then going to do an additional 3 rows, and those 3 rows should be roughly the same width as this cable stitch detail, and also because we need to end along the bottom. So for my back panel, from this first row all the way over to my last, I have a total of 29 rows. Now when that back panel width is completed, we're going to do the same underarm portion that we did for the front panel, then do a chain up a 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So now that both our front and back panel are completed, what we're going to do now is seam everything up, and we're going to start with seaming up the shoulders. So first things first, we're going to place the front panel on top of the back panel, making sure that the cable stitch detail is faced inward because we want our seams to be along the inside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then a single crochet seam. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 just to secure, and put 1 single crochet into every side row. So starting with our first side row within the front panel, insert. First side row within the back panel, insert and single crochet. Let's do that again. First side row within the front panel, insert. First side row within the back panel, insert, single crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up our shoulders. Now we're going to seam up our sides. So first things first, we're going to make sure the work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam that we did for the shoulders still along the outside. Then we're going to insert a hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and we're going to single crochet all the way up. We're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. From here, we're going to find that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet everything together. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, single crochet, and we're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming everything together, and now we're going to get started on our collar. So first things first, we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along our neckline, and we're going to single crochet along the entire thing. So I just so happen to insert my stitch marker into the stitch that's nearest to my shoulder seam, so I'm going to work my way down my front panel first. Now working down our front panel, we should have some regular stitches to work into, so just put 1 single crochet into each of those stitches. Then I will meet everyone back once we reach our first side rows. I made my way down my single crochet row, and I'm at my first side row. Now working into each of our side rows, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. So doing our first one, this is my first side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. So insert with just 1. Into my following side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this. Let's do that again. This is my following side row, insert with 1 single. This is my following side row, so now I'm going to insert with 2. So into that top loop with 1 and 2, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around, but once we reach the top of our cable stitch detail, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into each of those. Then from there, just continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row until you make your way all the way around and slip stitch into that chain space. Now, as a really quick tip, the single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch, so when it's completed, try your piece on, making sure that it's not too tight. Now, if it is, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you guys back. We are back, and our single crochet row for our neckline is complete. Now what we're going to do from here is make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Then we're going to do a slip stitch row all the way back down. So now that we had our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next chain, insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. And from here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. And we do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is just find that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch, and that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, still doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to work our way up, flip our work, and now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding that first stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop, making sure that we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to insert in through that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and that's it. We're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Once we reach the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base again, pretty much the same way that we did our previous rows. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch, flip our work, and 1 back loop slip into every stitch. From here, we're just going to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam it together. So we are back. We have just completed our slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam everything together. So since this is an outside loop slip stitch seam, we're going to make sure the work is slipped right side out. Then we're going to insert a hook into that first stitch into the front panel's front loop. So finding that first available stitch, we're going to insert into that front loop only. Then finding that first available stitch into the back panel, we're going to find that back loop. Then once we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. Now let's do that again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. Then into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. When we have these 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back and we're ready to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to make sure the work is slipped right side out, right side up, meaning all of our seams are along the inside. Then we're going to insert our 5.5mm hook still into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then we're going to do a single crochet row. So just like into the side rows for the neckline, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So we're going to chain 1, and this is my first side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 and then there's 2. This is my following side row, insert with just 1, and we're going to continue this till we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our shoulder seam, and then I'll meet you back. So we've made our way up with our single crochet row until we have reached our shoulder seam. Now what we're going to do is insert a stitch marker into that last stitch on this side of our single crochet row. Then we're going to single crochet our way back down the other side. Now we're just inserting our stitch marker because we do need to know where our 2 middle stitches are. So finding that first stitch on the other side of our shoulder seam, we're going to insert in through there with 1 single crochet and insert a stitch marker into that stitch as well. Now that we have these 2 stitch markers into place, we're going to continue on with the rest of our single crochet row. Then I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet row is complete, we're going to get started on the length of our sleeve. So getting started on the length, we're first going to switch out to our 6.5mm hook. Then we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be. And I would like for mine to have a longer cuff, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 55. That's roughly 15 inches or 38 centimeters. Now we're going to do a half double crochet row back. So we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then yarn over into the chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook. Insert with our first half double, and from here continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. So we've made our way all the way down with our row 1, leaving that last chain. Now into that last chain, we're all going to do an increase of 2 half doubles, so yarn over into that last chain with 1. Same last chain with a second half double crochet. Now we're going to connect it into the base, and connecting it into the base is going to be done pretty much the same way that we did for the collar. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch that doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now working our way down, we're going to start the row off with an increase of 2 back loop halves again, so yarn over into that first stitch, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. Insert with an increase of 2 back loop halves, there's my first, into that same first stitch with a second, then continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving that last stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3 when we have just 1 stitch left. So we are back. We made our way down with our row 3, leaving that last stitch. Into that last stitch, we're going to do yet another increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So there's my first, into that same stitches back loop with a second half double, and connecting it into the base the same way that we just did. Finding that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Flip our work and repeat our 2 previous rows until we're worked into our first stitch marker stitch. Once we have the first half of our sleeve completed, I'll meet you guys back to do the decrease side. So we are back. We have made our way all the way up until we have worked into our first stitch marker stitch. Now we're going to repeat everything we did here, but instead of increases, we're going to be doing decreases. So the following row may depend whether if we end along the base or along the outer edge. I ended along the base, so I'm going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, so the same way that we've been doing, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can start the row off with a decrease. For those of you that have ended along the outer edge, what you guys are going to do is chain 2, flip your work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches, and then within the next clip, I will meet you guys back to do that row. So since I just worked my way up to the following row by slip stitching into that next stitch into the base, I'm going to start the following row off with a decrease. So starting with a yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. From here, I'm going to continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way back, leaving the last 2 stitches again. So we have just made our way back down, leaving the last 2 stitches nearest to the base to do our decrease together once more. So what we're going to do is yarn over into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. From here, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch, insert, and that slip stitch still doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then from here, we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. We are back. We have just completed the decrease side of our sleeve. Now from here, we're going to seam everything up, and the seam is actually going to be done exactly the same way as the side seam. So just to talk you guys through it, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out because we want this seam to be along the inside. Then we're going to do our same single crochet seam till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut. Then once we have that completed, we can get started on our cuff. And getting started on our cuff, we're going to start with a single crochet row. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out now, we're going to make sure that our single crochet seam is now along the inside. We're going to insert our 5.5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom edge of our sleeve, and we're going to do a single crochet row. So we are going to start with a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into every other side row to help it cinch. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. We're going to skip the following one into the next, find that top loop, insert with 1 single, again, skip that next stitch, into the next, insert with a single. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more side rows left to work into, I'll meet you back. We are back. Our single crochet row along the edge of our sleeve is complete, and now we're going to do our cuff. Now I would like for this to be a longer cuff, so what we're going to do right after we've slip stitched into that chain space is make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. And I'd like for my cuff to be just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 20. Then from there, I'm just going to do back loop slip stitch rows exactly the same way that we did the cuff. So I'm going to get that finished, make my way all the way around, and we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We have just completed making our way all the way around with our slip stitch cuff, and we are going to seam it together now. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our collar, so it is going to be another outside loop slip stitch seam. So all we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, then do our same outside loop slip stitch seam till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat everything on the other side. So now that both of our sleeves are all finished up, now we're going to get started on the bottom bands. So that's going to be pretty simple. We're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then inserting our 5.5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece, we're going to do a single crochet row. So all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side half double crochet row. We should already know how to do that because we did that for the underarm before we got started on the sleeve. Then just make your way all the way around. Also, once we reach the bottom of our cable stitch detail, 1 single crochet into every stitch. Once we made our way all the way around, you're going to want to try on your piece because this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once one is completed, try it on, making sure that it's not too tight. If it is, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip, and I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet row along the bottom is complete, we're now going to do the bottom band, which is going to be done exactly the same way as the mock neck and the cuff. So after our single crochet row is done, we're all going to start by making a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. And coincidentally, I would like for my bottom band to be the same length as my cuff, so I'm going to make another chain 20, and that's just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Then do the same exact back loop slip stitch rows, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. We have now made our way all the way around with our bottom band, and we're going to seam it together. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our collar and our cuff, so just do the same outside loop slip stitch seam. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain of 1 and cut. And now that everything is all completed, we are all done. The last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoy the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.